to the very first episode of the Hoke Dems podcast, your go-to source for insights to local Hoke County Democratic politics, community engagement, and how we do things here in Hoke County. We're making strides to a better future for all of our residents, and we're your hosts, William Munn and Tyson Moy, and we're super thrilled to embark on this journey with you. Every other week, we're going to dive into those issues that really matter to you here at home. We're here to amplify your voice, answer your questions, and connect you with the change makers and advocates who are really working hard to enhance our quality of life and keep us from a dystopia that we don't want to devolve into. And so, tonight's episode, I think what we're going to do is really kick it. We're going to talk about why this podcast is more than a podcast. We want it to be a conversation. We want it to be a movement. We want to talk about the power of local action and how community involvement shapes the fabric of our democracy, and how the Democratic Party, who we are, what we're doing to drive those changes, and how you can be a part of this, your role in the big picture. I think sometimes with the 300 million Americans, oftentimes we feel like a small speck of it, but we're all part of a beautiful tapestry, and all of us have our roles to play. So we have to, in the role of the vote, we have to value every one of those votes, volunteer, and be sure that we are giving ourselves to that civic engagement. So
now, if all that sounds a little bit daunting, I would like to point out, just by listening to this podcast, you have already taken your first step in getting involved. And that first step leads to the next, to the next, to the next. And wherever that ends up, you're impacting your community, making positive change, and being part of the movement.
That's real, man. Well, Tyson, let's introduce yourself to our audience. Let them know who you are. I think you have a fascinating background, and I think that our audience will agree.
Okay. Well, good to be here with you tonight, William. Looking forward to our first episode. So, originally from Nevada, moved around all over the western part of the United States, joined the Army out of college, finished ROTC, spent 10 years in the Army, pretty much done with that now, on my way out. I'm starting law school this fall. Planning to stay in North Carolina, but we'll see what happens. Politically, I feel a special place in my heart for the Democratic Party. It's the party of the civil rights movement. It's the party of the Great Society. It's the party of the New Deal. And those are the things that have kept me alive. Like, it's an exaggeration to say that without Medicaid, without food stamps, without temporary assistance for needy families, I wouldn't be here today. And, in my time in the Army, all I could do was donate and cheerlead from the side. But now that I'm done, it's time to get involved and make that change any way I can.
And I really appreciate that. I appreciate those words and your perspective. A lot of folk would, not talk about their humble beginnings, but I think it's important as we uplift the role of government in our lives and the good that it can do. I think we've all experienced the last 40 years of this banter around how government's bad and evil and inefficient. But, in a lot of ways, we know it's saved lives, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I thank you and appreciate you for your service. That you hear it all the time, but I really do, and the perspective that it brings. So, I'm William Munn. I am just an Eastern North Carolina boy. I had an opportunity to go to college at my parents, with the university my parents met and married in the 70s at. And so I was followed in their footsteps to go to Fayetteville State University. I was interested in politics then, and had opportunity really to follow that the career path and work for two really good members of Congress. But I always noticed there was a gap or a chasm between the ability for people to connect policy outcomes in their lives. And so I went back to school and wanted to focus on policy change and policy development. And then it continued to see the disconnect between that process and the community. And so I've had, the great joy of working with a nonprofit that really believes in people power. And so I'm just very happy to have that experience and the freedom to be with my family a lot more. So got kids and stuff. Unfortunately, that's where our friendship, Tyson and our friendship and similarities. And Tyson is a Cowboys fan, and I'm an Eagles fan. I guess we'll allow some time for a bit of banter here. Both that argue had pretty disappointing seasons, but I guess technically our season was a little longer since you all lost first. Is that right, man?
Yeah, I think what was it, 24 hours? You were able to hold that. But
It's
it's just more, it's more proof of the things we can overcome when it comes to what really matters.
that's right.
You know,
That's right. So, man, what are you looking forward to in this election cycle? I mean, we've been through, and I'm sure we all went through the horror of 2016 and the redemption of 2020, but then the horror of January 6th, 2021. What do you what do you anticipate seeing in this upcoming cycle?
so I'm the eternal optimist, and I have to say that I think this cycle is going to be the repudiation of Trumpism, of MAGA republicanism, and of all the nastiness that comes with that.
Yeah.
There are enough people after January 6th, especially, that are not going to go back there. And I think that's what we're going to see. And we need to get off the polar coaster. We need to go outside and touch some grass and remember that people know what they saw on television that day. They know what happened. And, it's not going to be the 99% to 1% that this election should be. But you know what? I think it's going to be a good one. And I think Democrats are going to win up and down the ballot. I think we're going to take back some seats. I think we're going to surprise some people. And we're going to do what Democrats have always done, and that's help people, and that's make people's lives better and work together to do it.
It's powerful. Wow, yeah, that gives me goosebumps, and I appreciate that optimism, and I share it. I think Americans don't want to go back to that dark place when we were huddled in our homes in 2020 and did not know and have very much faith that our federal government was going to do the right thing. I remember looking at the governor that we had, or still have, Rick Hooper and, Mandy Cohen, and realizing that they were the buffer between us and the crazy man who half the time wanted to pretend like the pandemic didn't exist. And so again, I'm just, I don't think people want to go back to that dark place. I don't think people want to, succumb to the orgy of hatred that we see every day when it comes to Republican talking points. And, I'll be the first to say this podcast isn't about bashing Republicans in any sort of way. I think a healthy two-party system where ideas are fairly arbitrated and debated is healthy, but we don't see that at this point in time. It's largely devolved. The other parties largely devolved into a cult of personality, and it's not healthy. It's not healthy. Even if you are in a marriage, a forced marriage, and you're the person trying to be the bigger person, it still has a negative impact on you. I think that's certainly what's happening with Democrats, is that we're standing by and we're hoping that this, family member of ours or spouse of ours we get it together, and you just keep, going off the deep end. But I do see us hitting the ground and knocking it out this year, and I think part of that's going to come at the expense of the other side, the other ideology, just falling apart. And I don't think this is sustainable, this kind of hatred and lack of policy. One of the things you mentioned I appreciated at the beginning was your experience and how those safety net programs, literally saved your life, and how so many of these concepts and so many of these resources are being debated, every day. And so, in some of our previous conversations, you mentioned, free lunch for folks during the summer, and you eloquently put, that's being questioned by Republican governors as if that's not something that we should be doing, or Not that we can do, but something that we should be doing. As much food as we waste. So, yeah, I think we have a distinction to draw this year: humanity or inhumanity. Calm, collected leadership versus chaos and callousness. And I don't think it's close. So I'm looking forward to delving into these conversations more and more. I'd love to pose, another question, to you when it's all said and done, and you're a grandfather and your grandkids come to you. What do you think like, your grandkids are going to say about, say they're astute political historians? What do you think they're going to say about this cycle?
I think they're going to say that this is the cycle where we turn the corner.
Mm,
I agree with you 100%. Like, I don't want to have to agree with Republicans on policies, but I want them to have policies.
yeah,
And you know what? They used to. And we could talk about this tax bill versus that tax bill, or this infrastructure project and system versus this one. And we're past that. And we need to get back to it. So I hope when they look back on this, they see us in our sort of Weimar Republic, Hitler on the rise moment. And I don't think that we're being dramatic when we make that comparison
no, not at all.
and say, enough people cared, enough people believed in the system, believed in democracy, and stood up and defended it. It's it's funny. The founding fathers have very much become the sort of placeholders on the right. And I think, to quote Secretary Buttigieg, we have to take patriotism and religion back. These belong to us just as much as they do to the right. Ben Franklin said, it's a republic if you can keep it. And this is the time that I hope our grandkids can look back, and they're as big as nerds as you and I, say, you guys did it. Thank you. Now
Yeah, I
we're
think they
dealing
could.
with whatever's next.
No, 100%. I think they can look at us as the greatest generation, just like the World War II generation that saved us from our, and ironically ourselves at this point. That's 100%.
Well, so a little
Um,
closer to home, what do you want little William the Fourth, to say to you when he's finishing up his PhD?
quite honestly, I just want him to be alive, and given the history of this country, that's not always a given. You know what I'm saying? And given and if the other, that's reality here, is that if we lose this election, everyone loses, and there's no, some group is going to get fed to the blenders, to the, you know to, someone has to go. And I think we saw that when one of the first things Trump tried to do in 2017 was the Muslim ban. And so you spend all this time talking about how you're going to get revenge. Well, if you win, then you best believe they're going to go after somebody. And there's no assurances that there won't be black people. There's no assurances that won't be gay people, or whoever. You feel how you feel about whatever group, you shouldn't wish violence and death upon them. And we hear that in not so veiled terms anymore. And so to answer the question, I mean, literally for black people, we feel like every election is the election. We're living election in this country because we can't take one off because of just the amount of vitriol and and violence that are behind those words that we hear every day. And so I'm not engaging in hyperbole when I say I just want him to be alive. I want all of our kids to be alive, but I do want him to look back and say, "You all did it," and just like like you said, your son, and that we'd win, and that we, finally put to bed, this really scary ideology. I mean, it would be a relief to be able to look at a candidate like, I can't even say Nikki Haley anymore.
No, because she's too deep in it. Like,
Yeah, right, exactly. Like I'd love to look at one of their candidates and be like, oh, okay, well, it's not the end of the world. I don't have to fear for my life if this person gets elected. Like, quite literally is where we are. DeSantis, I would have feared for my life. I think that
Well,
Nikki
he
Haley
might be worse than Trump because
he might
he
be
would actually know how to use the instruments of power. Like
absolutely.
at least Trump's a buffoon.
That's absolutely right. Like he has no self control. That's another reason we really got through it. Those 4 years is because he had. But I think Stephen Miller and Steve Bannon have learned and sit on the sidelines long enough now that they would, in the first 18 months of a second Trump presidency, would it would be horrific. That being said, I mean, he, uh, can you let's think about the other side. Like this is a actually great point. If you could pick the next two election cycles, let's just forget it, just 2028,
Okay.
who would be your Republican candidate and who would be your Democratic candidate?
Well, so Democrats easy. Gonna reveal my cards early on this one and be an early endorser of Gretchen Whitmer.
Okay, nice pick.
Good Midwestern, social democratic sort of, just the right person to be the first woman president.
Yeah.
Like I think she could really break that glass ceiling. If it ends up being someone else, we'll go back and dox this first podcast and make sure I said Roy Cooper or Tim Waltz or Bench or whoever else. On the Republican side, I mean, there's no one left in the House. In the Senate, like if I wanted to be, the token centrist, I could say some sort of Mitt Romney, but he's too old and currently reading the Mitt Romney biography and reminding myself what an absolute monster he is. Like it's not like he was this great, loving, would have helped our country. No, he just wouldn't have done the fascist part, I guess, which
Right,
is a
right.
low bar. I mean, maybe like the Larry Hogan.
So we were talking about Republican presidential candidates in 2028 as well as Democrats, and so Tyson chose Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan, which I think is an excellent choice. And you didn't take Roy Cooper. No, I think Roy's too old, and if people come back and burn me for it, so be it. It's my thinking. I think he's too old.
It's too tough to go from former governor to president.
Yeah.
Like you have to be in something. It's so hard to come from the couch.
That's right.
To the presidency.
That's what it looks like you have a veneer of dust on you, and it was all psychological. But it's just like you're old. No, that's right. And he's no spring chicken. I mean, there's a certain level. What about Gavin Newsom?
So,
and to be quite honest, I have no strong opinions at this point in time. I just don't want to.
So I think him as a messenger, it's almost unparalleled. I mean, he embarrassed Ron DeSanctimonious, that debate on Fox News. Like don't know the last time I've seen an adult man embarrassed like that. Whenever you see him in an interview, he's great.
Yeah.
I think, and this is not on him. I think this is more maybe too much inside baseball, but I think for whatever reason, the right has been able to demonize California, which is a great place, great state. It has its problems, same as anywhere.
Yeah.
But I think a Californian would have a tough time on the national stage right now. I think there's enough of that, eye roll California, forgetting that it's just the big, it would be the fifth largest economy in the world if it was its own country. I mean, it's an incredible engine. This country couldn't function without California.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. That was my inarticulate, rambling answer.
No, I think it's great, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I think there certainly would be hand wringing and eye rolling in the primary process. Yeah, he'd be able to raise so much money, and it'll be interesting. I'm positive that it'll be a great primary. I think.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side, all I'm seeing, and is Haley and DeSantis, which is terrifying, which means that, yikes. What
I mean,
about
I bet you Ted Cruz runs. I bet you Josh Hawley, Tom Cotton. I bet they all run, but
all
just
terrifying?
all terrifying.
All terrifying. What about Rick Scott from Florida?
Ooh. So I think Rick Scott touched the third rail with the
Mm,
Social Security and Medicare threats. And
mm,
the fact that there are videos of him saying he's going to get rid of it or
mm.
privatize it, which is getting rid of it,
Yeah,
just with 2 year buffer. I don't think anyone can bounce back from that. I mean, that's
fair enough.
yeah. I
Fair
mean, there's
enough.
just you don't talk about Social Security. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
it's political suicide, and it's an unforced error, which
yeah,
which begs the question, how many other unforced errors would you make?
yeah.
And what's really going on there? Do you see Texas producing any more presidential candidates from the left or from the right? I mean, we had our man that I'm blanking on,
Beto.
Beto, yeah, and
I
I'm
voted for
sure
him in
that
18 for the Senate when we lived
did
in
you?
Texas. That you should have been in El Paso in 2018. I mean,
Look, I
that was
heard,
his district. I
yeah,
mean, he was loved. He was loved there.
I heard, and I don't know how true this is. I heard from a couple of folk that had he taken more of a moderate tack, that that his you know vivacity, that's probably not a word, his his energy, along with the fact that Ted Cruz is so hated, he could
Mm.
have really taken. I think it was from a Republican strategist, but be that as it may. Abbott, you think Abbott's foolish enough to try to throw his hand in the hat ring? I mean, I don't think he has any sort of national.
No, I mean, I have to imagine that's what all this border shenanigans
Sure, of
is
course.
it's him trying out for it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think so. I think it's similar to like the Rick Scott, he's done things that are popular in the weird suburbs of Dallas where
Mm-hmm.
the most hateful part of Texas lives. Well, Texas joke for anyone that's from there. I don't think a lot of it would play well. And I also and this is an indictment of the right. I think a lot of people on the right would have a hard time voting for someone in a wheelchair. Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
they're cruel enough that they would poke fun at it. They'd bring it up. It would be this thing. And like FDR was on the left for a reason. Like we can look we can look at somebody and see what's in their heart, and that's what matters to us.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
How about you, William? What are any thoughts on like the Christie Gnomes or the other sort of MAGA universe folk?
It's hard for me to predict what will happen when Donald Trump loses. Will the party finally be able to rest back? Will there be that civil war that I've been waiting for so long? I think, again, looking at the way that Republicans have cowered behind Trump just to win. I think it's been one of the most disgusting things I've seen in my adult life. Will they have the agency at that point in time to be able to fight back and take their party back? I don't know. I don't know if there's enough left. I mm, I don't know. I don't know.
Do you think Haley endorses Trump when she inevitably drops out?
Yeah, yeah. Everyone
Yeah.
bends the knee.
Yeah.
She knows she doesn't have a future at this. If she doesn't, which again makes me very afraid about what happens. When he loses, it, it's unprecedented
Yeah.
and very frustrating that we have to go through this 91 charges, and we have to hope and cross our fingers that this guy doesn't get elected again. It says a lot about folks who believe in him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had another question, and it is escaping me.
All right. Well, I'll ask you one while you think of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So, we've talked the negative partisan part.
Mhm.
What's the Democrats excuse me. What is the Democratic pro message for 2024? So we're going to defend democracy. We're going to stop Trump. But what are we going to do for you? It's not enough to stop things. It's not enough to
Sure.
prevent. It's taking back the majority. It's doing the things at the state and national level. What would you like to see the priorities be?
I think talking about how it is that we lead into a new energy economy, and that's partly biased from my from my role. But we really are at a transition and a turning point in human history where we cannot continue to use fossil fuels the way that we're using them. And our global competitors are locking up the supply chains, and we cannot afford to not compete, right? So I think, given the incredible investment from the Inflation Reduction Act, we should double down and talk about how we are going to make America the leader in continuing to be the leader in this transition to renewable energy, to a sustainable economy. I mean, Elon Musk is absolutely crazy, and I give him zero credit for the success of Tesla over the past, 6 to 18 months. But that's an American created company that is right now the do you know the Model Y is the world's most popular car at this point? The Model Y. Actually, let me fact check that real quick. But it is yeah, it is the world's best selling car. The Model Y, Tesla Model Y was the world's top selling vehicle in the first quarter of 2023, second quarter of 2023, and the third quarter of 2023 in the world. And that's an American company. That's American ingenuity. That's American engineering. And that's something to be proud of. And I
Yeah.
think, and the thing that frustrates me about Musk is that if you shut your mouth, we as Americans could rally around, this company
Mm.
and use it. And the US government is dying to do that. Like, the deals they're willing to do with them because they're a charging network. But he keeps saying this crazy stuff. And at any rate, but
And when he's not
I not
focusing on it, how much energy has he put into Twitter that could have been better served
absolutely
making the next generation of electric semi trucks, next generation of electric everything? I mean,
yes,
there's so much room for innovation, so much room in this space where the green economy can be like the next industrial revolution if we
100%.
just put our hand out and take it.
100% is there. Wind and solar and water and hydro, and I'm not a huge fan of nuclear because I don't think we figured out how to do it in in the amount of time that we need to get it online. But no, I think that's the future. I think broadband, for everyone, and the investment in infrastructure that we've already made. I think people want to see themselves as I don't I think Americans have stopped dreaming about what's possible and are dreaming about just how to survive. And I think we have to grasp that mantle of what's possible, whether it's Mars, whether it's the moon, whether it's creating the next battery that the car battery that allows you to drive 500 miles on a charge. Like, these things, like that is really close. And and then not only that, but talking about how these investments that we've already made, if we stay the course, will in fact transform the lives of not just the rich, but everyone. One of the reasons why we are seeing a our electricity bills go up in North Carolina is because the state's number one investor owned utility, Duke Energy, buys its natural gas from abroad that it likes to use to create electricity, which is terrible on the economy, terrible on the environment, but also a variable cost one that we can't control. So if Russia decides to gobble up another, European country, we proclaim we go out here, fake outrage, and want to uh, create sanctions and not buy gas, and gas goes up again. Well, guess what else goes up again? Our electricity, because that's where we That's
Mhm.
where the global market for natural gas is going to become constrained. But no one has a monopoly on solar. No one has a monopoly on wind. You know, and so I think that dreaming about a grid that is much more, much more sustainable is what we're looking for is something we should be trying to achieve. So dreaming about the 22nd century and how we get there and what it looks like and preparing for it, I think that's what the Democrats should be talking about. And they should beat themselves on the chest for making the investments to get us there.
Mhm.
So what's going to be so let me ask you this question. Speaking of the renewable energy transition, what will come first for you? A solar roof or a electric car?
Oh, so I would say I think about this a lot.
Yeah,
I would think I would go with the solar roof only because you actually hit on something I think about a lot. I think there is about to be a leap forward on electric cars. And
right.
I think a lot of people who are buying them like this year and next year are going to have just the tiniest bit of buyer's remorse in like
Sure.
4 years when, oh my gosh, the super battery that does whatever, So I'm waiting a few years on the electric car. I think there's the people who are on the cutting edge, people like yourself who are leading the charge and taking us to the promised land. I thank you for it. But like I said, I feel like that innovation is about to hit. Where the
You're
solar
right.
panels are here. They're here.
Yeah.
They're great. They work.
Yep. You're 100% right, my friend. I already have a bit of buyer's remorse now, knowing that there's so much incredible technology packed into those things that are just getting better and better and better. I would have honestly, if I had had my way, I would have gotten solar panels first, but because bad solar panel or solar policy in the
Mhm.
co-op that I live in, that it doesn't make financial sense for me to do at this point in time. So I took that money and bought an electric car, which I love, but it gets 265 miles per charge. I don't drive 265 miles a day. I have a home charger, so it works for me. I always tell people, look, it's got to work for your situation. But no, when the 500-mile batteries come out, it's going to be absolute. And then you're able to charge a lot faster. It's just going to get better and better and better. It's a really great time to be alive because I think a third of our emissions in the world come from automobiles. This podcast is going to range from a lot of different areas. We're going to wax and wane. We're not going to stay in electoral politics. We're going to talk about life and all the things that connect to it. So, if you're wondering why we're not talking about the next Senate candidate or Tom Tillis or Roy Cooper, it's because this is going to be a conversation that's going to be predicated on life. That's going to situate life first, but then it's going to infuse a heavy dose of politics. And so we're going to show you how to talk about politics civilly. There are going to be things that Tyson and I don't necessarily see eye to eye on, but no one's going to see eye on everything because we all come from different places. But one thing I can say for a fact is that we both respect and appreciate each other's humanity. We have families, and from I can work with anyone in that space. So man, this has been great. I don't want to go too long on this first episode. It's gonna be a tough time for the editor, man. But let's preview a little bit of the couple of guests of the guests that we're gonna have upcoming episodes.
Yeah. So we are going to be having Florine Fleming. She's a small business owner who prioritizes faith over profits. We're going to have our very own Reverend Garland Pierce. He's a pastor, an Army veteran like myself, a community leader who understands how to lead in these divisive times. I'm running for reelection this year, so it'll be good for us all to get to know him a little better, hear his message, and be inspired to organize and vote for him.
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll have some activists and other folk coming on as our calendar, fills out. But this is gonna be great. So Tyson, this has been like water falling and just flowing in, and I look forward to the conversations, the different places it'll take us. But when we talk about, when we go from, we can start with Mitt Romney and we could end up in Idaho, and I think that's worth talking about because I want people to be able to talk about politics and about the leaders and the decisions that they make, just like they're able to talk about, the groceries and the weather and everything else. Because in this country, we made politics taboo and whatnot, but at the end of the day, it's incredibly important, and it's not a billionaires boys club, billionaires boys club, whatever. You know what I mean? Wow, that was the fastest, 40 minutes? I don't even know how long it went, but look, man, this has been great. This episode has flowed like water, and we're looking forward to getting back to you. Don't want to make this first one too long. It'll be heck on our editors. But at any rate, man, thank you all for joining the Hoke Dems podcast. I'm going to have to learn how to say the name to my own podcast, our own podcast. But thank you for joining the Hoke Dems podcast. And we look forward to many more fruitful conversations about life, politics, and quality of life, improving quality of life. See y'all next week.
Thank y'all. See ya.